All right, everybody, good morning. My name is Brett Carruthers. I'm NYSER's Director of Risk Management on behalf of the NYSER Board of Governors. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you here this morning for our seminar on hate speech or free speech versus hate speech, navigating DASA in how this fits in and how this helps you with that slippery slope. As we get started, just a couple logistical items as we move forward here this morning. First off, if you would, please sign in the chat, just your name and your school district. That helps us with verifying attendance for CTLE forms. If you need a CTLE form, they are available on the NYSER website under the Education Events tab. If you scroll down to today's seminar, the forms are there. You can download them. You can also email me. I did put my email address in the chat box. We will be monitoring the chat box throughout the seminar. So if you have questions, we'll get to those at the appropriate time. If it's something that Randy is discussing, we'll see if it fits there, or we'll definitively get to it at the end of the seminar. Today's presentation, Randy does have some support materials. Those are available on the NYSER website under the Education Events tabs for today's seminar. The seminar is being recorded. The recorded seminar will be up in about 10 days or so. It'll be on the website in the same place. Now, it's my pleasure to welcome this morning, Randy Nathan. Randy has a program called, Randy has an organization called Coach Randy Says. I have known Randy for a long time, and he's done a number of excellent programs for us. First programs he did for us, he did a lot of work with us in the athletics area with our coaches and with navigating the maze of hazing and bullying in that environment. Randy has done a series of bullying seminars for us, and two of those seminars have been done in the last couple of years. Part one and part two to the bully and me. If you scroll down through our education events, both of those seminars are available if you want to go back and look at them. They're both excellent seminars. And really, they get it, the crux of preventing bullying, but also being a reflective in nature. Look at some of the things that you do as an educator and how you manage classrooms and stuff where you may be contributing to some of the problems versus solving some of the problems. So without any further ado, I turn things over to this morning's presenter, Randy Nathan. So Randy, it's all yours.
Thanks, Brett. Good morning. Just double check my mic. It sounds okay for you? Excellent. Brett, thank you. We do go back quite a ways, and I cannot thank you enough. And I see David here as well and some other NYSER people for allowing me to continue doing what I love to do and figure out how to help schools, in particular students. And I'm very excited. My daughters would use the word I'm nerve-sighted, a little nervous because of the topic and what we're going to talk about, but very excited about the opportunity to engage in an important conversation. What's important to know real quickly is to know what today is not about. I'm not going to should on you. SHOULD. I'm not going to should. I'm not going to tell you what you should do or should not do. I've been in the business of consulting and working with schools all throughout the country, a lot of here in the Northeast, and every school district is unique and different. And so there's similar areas of concern, but today is not about shitting on you. It is about the chance to talk about some very important concerns that I think we have within our school systems, with our students, as well as with the balancing act of how do we help kids, how do we help our schools, and in many cases, parents and staff talk about very important volatile concepts. If you are like me, we have seen an increase of division of various forms throughout the country. And I believe that today's conversation about the balancing of hate speech and free speech along with DASA is really a beginning conversation. And I don't want to think anybody have the idea that this is an element of some kind of legal direction. It is very much intended for a conversation for us to have. I do like interactive. The hard part about doing an online webinar is just I don't get a chance to see people, read the room and feel people's feelings. So it's tough. And like all things, when it comes to these kind of workshops, obviously connect with any kind of attorneys you have about what you need to do and what you do from a legal standpoint. It's very likely we're going to talk about today is going to create some very uncertainties. It gets very, very confusing as we navigate this world. And my goal is to speak in the legalese of a non-attorney. My background is I'm a professor at the School of Social Work at Rutgers University. I've spent 20 plus years expert work with youth and teens regarding harassment, intimidation, and bullying. I do have an expert background of working with coaches and hazing, but my goal here is also as a sociologist to talk about the ramifications of what's going on to our kids and things of that nature. So I do have a professional disclaimer that I think this presents an opportunity to address some of the significant challenges that are facing students, parents, staff, and communities, and that we as a school have an obligation to role model the kind of behavior that we want to address in these moments over the course of our times. And I think we're, and I say we, and my wife is an educator, she's an administrator in New Jersey, I'm a professor, that schools have a certain obligation to figure out how to role model difficult conversations. So it's what we're dealing with is some very volatile, and I'm sure you've seen it, whether in the news or directly in your school, a lot of personal feelings. This is very emotional. It is possible that as I talk and share information, you might get angry. You might get scared. You might even get sad. Those are very reasonable feelings to have. Just know that my goal is not to make you angry. It is not intended for me to push your buttons to get you feeling certain things, but I do want you to think about how we, as an adult community of educators, find a way to help people understand and learn, whether it's learning from people's differences, appreciate other people's ideas and thoughts, but yet navigating the very treacherous world of social media and the world in which our students live in. So if you do have these emotions, if you want to scream and yell at me, if you want to stay after, there will be a period of time for questions and answers, and I'm happy to stay on later if need be. Just know that my goal is not to make you angry, make you sad, or make you scared. I really want to open yourselves up to ideas to figure out what are some of the best ways to deal with some of these conversations. So first things first is I want to do a quick reflection. And what I want you to do is, if you don't mind, and Brett's going to monitor the chat box, is take a moment real quickly and quickly describe the culture within your school. If you could, in 1 or 2 words, whether you're in a school or a district, take a moment in the chat box and just describe the culture within your school. If we were in a live situation, you'd lean over to a neighbor. If we had more time, I'd put you into a breakout room, but I am curious to know your thoughts because I want to keep you engaged in the conversation. How would you describe the culture within your school system and school district? Excellent. Family supportive, cohesive, supportive, welcoming, affirming, multicultural. Excellent. Thanks, Jane. Keep them coming culture, laid back, accepting, welcoming. Excellent. Keep those coming in. The next question I'd like for you to respond to is the question of the age-old questions. What is the difference between race and ethnicity? Or is there a difference between race and ethnicity? Real quickly, if you can just drop your words in there real quickly, quick reflection, because I want to kind of get you into a set induction. What is the difference between race and ethnicity? Physical characteristics, The group identify, thank James. Ethnicity refers to cultural, social construction, excellent. Take a few more physical aspects. This is cultural, excellent. It's cultural. Excellent. The important thing to connote here, right, is to identify is that race and ethnicity is a sociological phenomenon, meaning it's a sociological component that puts people into groups based on what is perceived race and perceived ethnicity. And it can be very, very confusing about how we identify that. And the last thing, what I want you to think about, because this is ultimately about what you take and how we embrace and help our students, what are the needs of your students? And these are three components we're going to address over the course of our conversation. What are the needs of your students? And thanks, keep throwing up thoughts in the chat box. That's great, thank you. Dylan, Paul, thank you. Kristen, and right, thank you so much. Appreciate you throwing out the thoughts. What are the needs of your students? To be heard, feel safe, yes. Encouragement, thank you, Marguerite. Excellent. Need for connection, yes, correct. They want to connect. To be seen, valued, heard. Sounds like you've taken some really good social emotional learning courses and understand the true connection of voice, a feel of belonging, need to feel they belong, to be empowered. All excellent, excellent comments. Thank you. Belonging. All right, Patrick. Very nice. I'm going to show you a picture. It'll be the same picture. Each time I'm going to ask a question involving that picture. It is designed not so much to have an answer. It's rhetorical, but I think you'll get the point as to why I'm asking these questions of this particular picture. And if you want to throw some thoughts in the chat box, please feel free. I love the fact that people are feeling comfortable, throw their thoughts in the chat box. All right. So here we go. Here we go. What race are these people? What ethnicity are these people? What gender are these people? And most importantly, right? How about their religion? What's their religion? Very nice. Human race. Thank you, James. You cannot answer this because you need to ask them. They are people. We live in such a phenomenal time where the empowerment of people, we decide what our gender is. We decide what our religion is. We decide what our race is. And that is a very important, it's all different types. So it's important as we move along in this conversation to appreciate and understand that when it comes to these core areas, we no longer can just assume when we see someone in front of us what the race, what gender, what religion, and or ethnicity. Those are things that are very personal, and people have their own identification of what race is over what religions are. Now, certainly, if they were wearing some religious artifacts, that might be able to be easy to identify. But in these particular pictures, you cannot tell. Question I have now, and if you don't mind dropping in the chat box, right? As an administrator, I'm not quite sure what your specific role is, or with your school social work, or if you're in athletics, or if you're in as a principal. As an administrator, staff person, what is your top priority? What is your top priority? Just gonna throw that in there in the chat box real quickly. So we got up here, safety. Student safe. Student safe. Safety, correct. Safe. So you're seeing a lot of common threads regarding what's important. And it's very likely that regardless of the specific components, I saw some building people, I saw some others that might be in HR. What we hope when it comes to this is making sure that whatever you're doing, our top priority are keeping kids safe. That is the ultimate concern and goal. Everything from their physical safety to their academic safety to their social, emotional, and mental wellness and safety. And it is becoming more and more challenging, more and more difficult for educators to ensure safety because there's so many outside influential components of what's impacting their sense of safety. And so part of the conversation does need to address what I like to call the proverbial white elephant in the room, is that it's very likely we're not necessarily having this kind of conversation without what transpired on October 7th. And I want to be able to be honest and open to the truth. It's possible we could have had conversations like this at some point in the past 8 years, but I do think that what happened on October 7th has transformed a world community, and in particular our schools, in a way that we need to talk about this. We need to talk about it in such a way. So I'm going to address the true reason why I've reached out to Brett and Brett has reached out to me, is to say, what can we do to help our schools understand the significance, and how do we go about and deal with this? So I'm going to just throw up a few posts. And as you know, the world in which our high schools and middle school kids live in particular, it's all social media and where they get their information. Here's a few things that I've noticed I just picked up recently happening within our New York school systems. All right. First things first is what happened in Yonkers. And yes, I do realize that there's been investigations and things have changed through investigations, but once it gets out there, it's like toothpaste in a tube. You cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube. So just like in print media, if there's some kind of error in reporting in the print media on somewhere on page 7, 8, they retract it and say, oops, we were sorry. With social media, once it's out there, it's out there. So this happened at a basketball game in Yonkers. We know this is actually something that happened here in New Jersey, where a particular individual wore a shirt that was symbolic of a particular situation at a Jewish day school. And you can imagine for some people, it created a very uncomfortable situation. Over here, we have what happened at Hillcrest High School, where a teacher supporting a particular area, and what transpired through, they called it a riot. I wasn't there, so I cannot speak specifically about it, but how it literally stopped the functioning of the school over a particular teacher. And another one is something that happened regarding a preschool teacher and the different thoughts and comments. So these things, and I'm sure there's more. And when Brett and I talked about doing this, we wanted to be honest with everything and help you understand the challenges of how do we deal with this. And I might even contradict what we're talking about, because the laws behind this and what we're doing are purposely arranged to contradict one another. And it's very difficult when it comes up with DASA. So I'm going to ask you to go back to the chat group real quickly and write down, if you could, what is your definition or understanding of free speech? I don't expect a long, 5 sentences. Real quickly, what is your definition of free speech? Very nice, Laura. Thank you so much for dropping it in there. Share ideas, perspectives openly. Very nice. Until you harm a protected class, defending that person. Very nice. Thank you, Ron, for throwing stuff in. To speak, debate, present. We know that free speech has become part of what is called the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment. Right now, I'm currently teaching a grad course in social welfare and social policy. We're going through the history of social policy. And we just finished the time period of the American Revolution leading up to the Civil War, the Continental Congress, and they got the Constitution, so-called rights, but then had to come up with this whole number of amendments to kind of the Bill of Rights. We like to say that free speech is a human right. And in this country, which is unique, we do have free speech, but it has been tested time and time again as what is free speech, what is not free speech. The true definition, right, is the idea that you have the right to speak, write, share ideas and opinions without facing punishment from the government. This is about a government issue. Free speech means you cannot be punished by the government. It is a First Amendment right that protects you from Congress making laws that would curtail your freedom of speech. That means that it's not so much, as a matter of fact, there's been cases where wearing a shirt, a symbol, a flag has been all identified elements of free speech. There are very little things that are not considered free speech. We'll get to that in a second, but it's important to understand that we have a right to pretty much say whatever you want, with very limited consequences. There has been the connection where you cannot scream fire in a crowded movie house. That has somewhat been rebuked over the course of time. But the idea is that you have a right in this country to say what you want. And as a matter of fact, the First Amendment is being addressed as we speak in a very large case impacting many people. This has gone through the water pipe for quite some time. With hate speech, real quickly, what is your definition of hate speech? Nancy, thanks for throwing out your thoughts on free speech. Excellent. Any thoughts about what is hate speech? In 2016, all right, what we did learn, target a specific group, negative speech against a specific group of people. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate. It was determined that there is no exception to free speech regarding hate speech, meaning that hate speech, as much as it's wrong or we don't like it, it's ethically incorrect, hate speech really is protected under freedom of speech and free speech, which is confusing because why would be accepting to hate speech? And it's very complex. And again, I'm trying to break this down to help you understand roles as educators, what this is about. So hate speech is part of free speech and is often allowed to. All right. Here's the official definition. It's any form of expression through which someone intends to vilify, humiliate, or incite hatred against a group or a class of people based on the protective categories of race, religion, skin color, sexual identity, gender identity, ethnicity, disabled, or national origin. All right, so that is hate speech. Now remember, free speech, you're allowed to say pretty much anything you want, right? Hate speech is very, very clear. So what is not protected by free speech, right? Obscenity, child pornography, defamatory speech, right? False advertising, true threats, and yes, fighting words, all right? Fight words. So let's go back here real quickly. Hate speech intends to vilify, humiliate, incite hatred against a group or class of people on the basis of categories, all right? What's not included, right, are obscenities, child pornography, defamation, false advertising, true threats, and fighting words, all right? You're going, wait a second. Isn't hate speech kind of fall into this category? And what about fighting words? What is fighting words? Well, if you can appreciate the comic strip, them is fight words, right? What we discovered, and this happened in the 1940s in a Supreme Court case, right? Hate speech can only be criminalized when it directly incites imminent criminal activity or consists of specific threats of violence targeted against a group of persons or people. Now, that makes kind of sense. But not too long ago, in 1989, what are fighting words, right? Them is fighting words. So now you're talking a direct personal insult or an invitation to exchange. Yes, they use this word, fisticuffs. All right. So into a fight. So it would seem, if you're following this along, this is where you're gonna get like confused and aggravated, because wait a second. Free speech means you can say anything, but yet hate speech is very much about directed towards a target. What's not protected, fighting words, true threats, and ultimately imminent criminal activity towards a group. We're inviting a change of fisticuffs. Does your brain hurt yet? Because as we talk about this, you're going, well, how do I balance this all out? I'm not a lawyer. I have stuff going on in my school. On top of it, I'm going to make things even more challenging. The Dignity for All Students Act, very clear. It's been around for over 10 years. Provide all students in New York public schools an environment free of discrimination and harassment. Now, I'm sure you've all noticed, if you've been following the DASA Act, it literally has no mention whatsoever about bullying. And I think it was done on purpose and from my other GAD, because bullying is a little bit unique from discrimination and harassment. Bullying is about often an imbalance of power, but it makes it very clear that these individuals, every student is allowed to come to school in an environment free of discrimination and harassment. All right. As a matter of fact, the Dignity Act makes it very clear, either actual or perceived. Remember those pictures I showed you about what someone's religion was, what someone's race was? Actual or perceived when it comes to race and color, weight, national origin, ethnic group, religion, religious practice, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, and sex. It is very clear over who is supposed to be protected through Dignity Act, which means everything we're facing currently, and it's not just so currently, but I'm bringing the current situation to the forefront because that's what makes this all so confusing. And the questions are, what do we do? I have constituents, I have groups. Some of you have one group that's more dominated by another. Some of you have been asked to make statements in support of one thing or another. And one group is getting angry, one other group is getting mad. And where do we stand? And we have to be there for certain groups of people. And this is a really hard area to navigate. Extremely difficult. And on top of it, right, part of the Alvea's bullying prevention program, bullying definition makes it very clear. It's when someone repeatedly and on purpose says or does mean or hurtful things to another person who has a hard time defending him or herself, right? That is the Alvea's definition. But as you can see, I've highlighted a portion of it, right, where it says a hard time defending him or herself. You will see in some situations, one group comes out and says one thing, another group is countering up, whether it's in protest or a rally. Are they really having a hard time defending themselves? So is that really bullying? And one would come to conclude that there's no bullying going on. Or is it harassment? Well, if they're both out there talking and fighting, then how's it going to be? So then we have the wonderful CDC. The CDC definition is any unwanted aggressive behavior by another youth or group of youths who are not siblings or current dating partners that involves an observed or perceived power imbalance and is often repeated. So some could say, in this school where I had shared back at Hillcrest High School, that could have been a very aggressive moment by a group of people. It was unwanted, it created imbalance of power, and according to CDC standards, it might very well be. So you have to balance. It is, and I will say this from the bottom of my heart, the work you're going through is not easy. It's not, you're no longer worried about your ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. This is about human behavior and helping our kids learn how to communicate in such a way that we need to find ways to connect. Because on top of that, I'm going to ask you to throw some stuff in the chat box in a second. Knowing all that now, what are some of the factors that are contributing to the increase of this kind of behavior, regardless of the sides, what's going on. It doesn't matter, the different areas. And this happens across the board, whether we saw it back within Black Lives Matter, we saw it with the Me Too movement, we've seen it when with George Floyd, we saw it in the LGBTQ community, right? What factors? Social media, thank you so much. What else? Social media pressures, copycat situations. So certainly our news, political discourse, thank you. Parent support or lack thereof, excellent. Social media, politics. Our news cycle is 24/7. And I come from a time, and Brett, I think we come right on the same time. We had 5 stations. We had one famous guy that gave us the news, Walter Cronkite, and it was pretty much at 5 o'clock at night. But now we have a 24-hour news cycle, which began in the very first Gulf War in 1991 when it came to CNN. So we have this 24 cycle of news, and the news is trying to get out there, right? So we have the political climate, which is often promoted, what we call like the media, right? We do have freedom of the press. It's the media does this. And so we kind of clump everything together within media, and it could be print, it could be TV, it could be a number of different things that we consider being media, right? Post-COVID, right? They're much more sensitive, right? We're a lot less trusting, James, of authority. We're a lot less trusting of potentially government. We're a lot less, and if we as adults are, it's even enhanced even further for students. We know that students do not trust adults. And the biggest influence that we know that not just impacts us, more importantly, our students, are their social media feeds. And we know the algorithms, right? We know that these kids love to follow influencers, right? Excellent. Thank you, Gabe. This concept of lack of age-appropriate context and clarity. Seeing is believing. It was said over and over again. Seeing is believing. And we learned in a very bad way 8-9 years ago that seeing is not believing. Just because you see something doesn't make it true anymore. And the influence of social media and influencers is extremely hard to grapple with, because our kids, right? We know the parents are the focal point of the socialization. Then kids make friends, it becomes their peers. But now you're throwing these influencers in their social media feed, which really take over. And then these teens share their influences with them, which means they're getting information from an influencer that there's no way to prove whether or not it's true or not. We understand fact checking. We no longer know what is true, what is not true. As an adult, I'm constantly aware of whether or not I'm getting information, what it is true. So social media is playing into it. We now have what is called the media bias chart. And as a professor that teaches grad students, we have to address this concept when it comes to articles. Is we want people to understand the information they're getting, but people don't like to hear anything that goes against their ideology, their thoughts. And so we got reconfirming information, media bias that happens. For many of you, this is like, okay, coach, I get it. So far, nothing new. Well, I want to throw a little wrinkle in. How might school professionals be contributing to this challenge? How might school professionals, whether right or wrong, good or bad, might be contributing to this particular challenge you're facing, in particular over this issue? Take a stab in the chat box. So, offering personal opinions, excellent. Thank you, Eric. What else you got there? Give a second here. I'll throw you avoiding challenging topics. They don't want to change what they've been doing for years rather than adapting to new challenges. Thank you, James. Thank you, Sharon. So I'm going to show you a post. Maybe you're for it, maybe you're against it. I don't know, but this could certainly be a way that a professional contributes to the challenge. And if you look on the bottom of the post, it makes it very clear that we're part of a group of educators looking for ways to get around censorship. That some of you, so it's ready to read, Kristen, what I'll say is in this post, and I'm just reading what's in the post, and I've seen this, it's out there, so I'm not making this up. It says, teaching while Muslim, NYC Educators for Palestine. Join us February 3rd from 10 a.m. to noon. Learn how to combat censorship of school and get practical resources on teaching Palestine you can use in your classroom. At the very bottom, it says, New York City teachers, all right, are slated to meet in this seminar on how to get around censorship. New York City Educators for Palestine. So this is a group and they're coming together, and I have no doubt it is in the right mind what they want to do things the right way, but to get around what they're referring to as censorship, but potentially specific curriculum that you are legally obliged to teach. That could potentially challenge what's going on in your school. All right. The other place that might be going on is your faculty lounge. In my experience, when I've done my work working with schools one-on-one, one of the most toxic environments on anything, not just what's happening now, is a faculty lounge. It is a place where people are allowed to talk freely and openly, but often can be a horrendous comments of students, student behavior, certain groups, politics, you name it, that put other staff member potentially in awkward, uncomfortable moments. So you need to understand that, yeah, you're going up a very, very difficult area. As a matter of fact, you throw that in, here's something else that might be impacting this particular issue. Who can tell me what color this baseball is? Just put it in the chat box. What color is this box? Is the ball? What color is it? White, white, red, excellent. Red. Thank you so much for playing along. White, 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 red, white, right, white. Excellent. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, let's pretend I give you a blue shade color glasses, and the blue is not to be mistaken. It is intentional, right? And I give you blue shades and have you look at that ball. What color will the ball become if you look through the shades of blue shades? The ball turns what? Dark blue. Very good. Yes, it becomes blue. Yeah, blue question mark, right? So it becomes blue. It becomes your blue shades. Now you take off those blue glasses, and now I'm gonna have you put on a pair of red glasses. What color does the ball now turn into? Red. So one can see that depending on your perspective, the lenses you wear, right? We know that the ball doesn't change colors. We know the ball doesn't change colors, but we do know the lenses of which we look through impacts what we see, which means our own personal biases, whether it's confirmation bias, which means we find things to confirm what we believe in, or implicit bias, where the biases that are just ingrained in us, we don't even know about, we see things through these lenses of our life. That plays into how adults communicate. And if adults have a hard time, how do we help our youth have these conversations? I know I'm not there with you, but I'm going to ask you to do a quick physical activity. To everybody, please just cross your arms. Right, so just cross your arms. Right, play along. Right, and then cross your arm the opposite way. Right, Brett has had me do this before. Right, Brett, when you cross your arms the opposite way, how does that make you feel?
Uncomfortable.
Comfortable, right? Different. Thank you, Eric. Thank you. What I'm about to show you are some pictures. They're going to make you feel uncomfortable purposely. You might say, you know what? It depends, right? Or you might use, well, what's the context of the picture? Or better yet, what's the meaning? Which is why I'm not here telling you how to handle the situation. But what I want to do is offer you examples of the challenges you face. All right. So all I want to do is to show you picture. And if you want to jump in and throw it in the chat box, is this free speech or is this hate speech? All right. Is it free speech or hate speech? First picture, right? Is that free speech or hate speech? Excellent, excellent. Excellent. So this is free speech. It is protected by the First Amendment. Now, depending what lenses you look this through, for some, it's considered hate speech. And the hate speech is based in over 70 years of growing up in a certain environment from a certain way that says, wait, that was used in a genocidal time period where the idea was to remove the individuals, Jews, Israelis, from the Jordan River to the Red Sea, based on the Israel states, the UN agreeing that Israel is going to be a country, right? So for some, no, that is hate speech. That is clearly hate speech. But for others, by our government, that is 100% free speech, right? How about this one? Please keep the world clean of, is that free speech or hate speech? Now, if we were at a great place, man, there's a chance we'd have a little conversation, right? So there seems to be a lot of hate. Please keep the world clean of. The United States government would say, no, that is actually free speech. You're allowed to have that symbol. It is based on interpretation, even though it's very clear, many people would agree that this is hate speech. This is the challenge. Excellent. Thank you so much for throwing out your ideas. How about this one? Free speech or hate speech? Never again is now. You've probably seen this. Free speech. Free. Excellent. Thank you all for jumping in and throwing your thoughts here in the chat box. I've got two more. Right? How about this? From the river to the sea, that's the flag you're going to see. Excellent. So this one is, right? Well, so to some people, that is 100% free speech, right? It is free speech. Now, to those who come from perspective of either genocide or oppression, that is hate speech. That goes against everything that they believe according to a group of people, all right? That can be considered hate speech. And Dylan, everybody else, there it is, Dr. Mara, right? It depends, right? It depends. That's exactly it. There is no right or wrong. It depends. Thank you for using that word, it depends. So here is the last picture. No, I actually have two more after this. I'm sorry. One more. By any means necessary. Is that hate? By any means necessary. Right? So some would say that could fall because that is meant to potentially incite something. But again, free speech. And many people feel angry and awkward, but free. And finally, this one. Every real Muslim is a jihadist. Allah is Satan. Now, again, I'm not claiming sides on any of this. I just want to merely offer this, right? So technically, it's free, but it is an awful thing to see. It comes across hate. And as you can see, as we're a group of people, the different perspectives also depends on where you grew up, where your school system is, how you're raised, your belief system. So what can you do? Right? You're going, well, okay, coach, this is great. I've spent a half an hour trying to figure this out, but you're not helping me here. Right? You're not helping me here because I feel helpless. And that is the problem and quandary that we have to deal with, which way you need to figure out to have some kind of plan. And it's something not to take lightly. And as you'll see, I believe it's going to get worse over the course of time. You need to have plans. You need to have contingency. And maybe you had some plans, given what has transpired since the mid 2010s, as far as 2015 and 16, has opened the floodgates to how we see these things in the strong division. This is just another perpetuation. Bucky Fulminster, many years ago, talked about this great enlightenment happening in 2010 and 2020. This great enlightenment about how it was going to raise our awareness about how we're supposed to be. And I think it's potentially he was a little bit wrong. So you have this hate speech and DASA. So one thing that you always have is going back to your code of conduct. There's a certain kind of conduct. It doesn't have to be necessarily intimidation, discrimination, although it might certainly be, but you go back to your code of conduct about what are your expectations of how you want your students to be. You're allowed to say, like, you're allowed to talk and say certain things, but you're not allowed to take it out on other people. You're allowed to be angry, but you're allowed now to take your anger out on other people. That's the concept behind harassment, intimidation, bullying. It's based on perception. And someone has strong feelings and passion about something doesn't necessarily make it right, and how they're communicating it, what they're doing, and is it intimidating to other groups of people? But how do you escape that? Safety is an important priority. How do you ensure every student's safe in their school based on, so that is an option. If you go back to the very beginning, the question I asked, there was an idea of what students need based on research. I believe, with the work I do, students want someone to believe in them. They want a purpose, and most importantly, is a safe place to belong. And schools, and many of you said safe, great family, is being able to come up with some kind of survey that opens yourself up to have kids let you know exactly how safe they feel in their school. What are the core issues? Part of what we do through Alveus is we do a questionnaire that allows students to talk about places where they don't feel safe and places where they do. So if that's what they need, are you ensuring, and what are you doing to get that feedback to do that? If you're like me, you go to a restaurant, you go and you buy something, you go to the tire place, within 24 hours, you're getting an email back asking you about customer service, how'd they do, right? Are we asking our customers, i.e. our students in many ways, even though they're not the ones flipping the bill, are we asking them, putting out surveys to see how we're doing? So as Brett says, when it comes to the world of sports, I ask athletic directors, are they putting together a survey for parents and players to offer feedback on the customer service? Are you asking your community members the hard questions as far as what are the things we're doing right? What are the things we can be doing better? Are we providing a safe place to belong? Are you have a place to where you can have your free speech to talk what you're saying? But are the people who might be impacted feeling safe as well? And that comes down to your culture. How are you creating the culture in your school? Are you providing equity, not equality? And we've done a lot of equity training in the difference between equity and equality. Is it equitable? Are you allowing for equity? Are you allowing for civil? Are we teaching our kids civility about how to disagree in a way where you're allowed to offer your thoughts and feelings, and you don't have to agree, but you do have to find a way to learn to live together in a way that allows different perspectives, different opinions, right? And of course, this idea of inclusion. Are you allowing everybody to include and give their thoughts? And this is the hard part. And so this is where you're getting information from lawyers telling you what you should do, what you shouldn't do. But ultimately, the idea is are you creating this culture of equity, civility, inclusion? Are you looking at these three core areas as you go out there and talk to certain students? Everybody can go and engage in the top 10%. Those top percent students can offer you great insight. But the bulk of the kids who kind of just fit in the middle, are they included and do you allow them? And understand the power and influence of culture as it pertains to their social media and the cyber components of what's happening. Next thing is being very clear about how you do things in your school, right? There are things that we do things here, things that are very visible, things that are not visible, meaning that if on the top of the glacier, everything in our school seems to be going okay. It is great things happening. We're very, very clear over what happens, right? You see the behavior. On the other hand, what's not visible, which impacts this conversation, are people's perceptions, attitudes, values, and beliefs. And because what has transpired since October 7th, people have very strong attitudes, values, and beliefs, often one way or the other. It does not necessarily seem, but there can be common ground, which is the most important life lesson when you teach children in our schools to create a safe environment, is what is the common ground and how do we as adults create this common ground for our students? Next thing is, do you have a school culture team? You might have some kind of committee that's formed of DASA, but are you looking that you are creating a positive school culture? And are you providing a menu or an avenue for students to provide feedback as to whether or not it is positive? And that includes the impact of parents and how you engage parents and the impact of your faculty. I'd imagine if you found out some of your faculty were attending that February 3rd workshop, which they have every right to attend if they want to, but then comes out and starts teaching in such a way that it goes against your core component and your mission statement, that's going to be a very difficult situation to handle based on what is your legal responsibility and whether or not it's actually creating a positive school environment. And lastly, before I go to questions and answers, is I do believe it's going to get worse before it gets better. We are in a very strong, very emotional, volatile election year, which means regardless of whatever shades of glasses you're wearing, you're going to get your confirmation bias. Your social media feed is going to be full of what you believe in. And it's going to test the limits of our human behavior sociologically of how we can do things. So we're at this chase as an opportunity that we must find a way to come together, whether it's with parents, it's within faculty, to hold healthy conversations, scream in the right kind of way, but acknowledge the ultimate goal is, are we creating the safest environment for our students? Does the curriculum piece where you're trying to get around, right, the censors, does that enhance the school community and make it healthier, or does it break down the core factions and really impact the students? Because we have changing places, changing times that literally happen in the 24-hour news cycles. And through that, we have changing thoughts, but ultimately, if we come together, we can help change the future. And that's kind of where I want to end it, to see if we have any questions. If you want to put anything in the box. Any questions? Brady, any questions at all? You're welcome, Stacy. Yeah, go ahead. Andrew, please.
Thank you. I just had a situation that, well, it didn't just happen, but it's kind of long, so I figured rather than type it, I would ask it.
Okay.
Last year during Pride Month, we had a Pride flag posted outside of our cafeteria, and a student during passing time ripped it off the wall, threw it to the floor, stomped on it, spit on it, and walked away. DASA was complaint was filed against him, and so on and so forth. But I'm wondering now, would that behavior be protected free speech?
Great question. And the workshop here would talk about, obviously, from the legal ramifications. You're allowed to that. You're not allowed to do that to the American flag, right? That is very clear that you're not allowed to the government, the American flag. But is that the contempt you might have regarding an LGBTQ flag? And did you also go through your code of conduct? The code of conduct is also a way to hold your students accountable to a certain behavior. That you're allowed not to like it, you're allowed to be mad and not agree with it, but through the code of conduct, are we allowed to do that? On the other hand, does that fall in the lines of hate speech? Was that to incite something? Was the object to incite a fisticuff? Right? And my guess wasn't necessarily. Go ahead. What do you think, Andrew?
Well, when I met with the student afterwards and asked him why he did it, he said that he wanted to teach these people a lesson and that what they're doing is wrong. He was clearly had an agenda.
He had an agenda, but was it an incitement to a fisticuffs into a fight?
I don't know that I could have made that argument.
Right. And so lawyers are very good when it comes to these particular arguments. And that's why we often go back, and you can find it in DASA, right? You can say, listen, it's an intimidation, right? It is discrimination. It is 100% bullying. But the kid could also get an attorney, file a lawsuit against you because they got written up as DASA, and an attorney would say, you're allowed. There's nowhere in our government constitution that says you cannot take an LGBT flag, take it off and step on it, right? They will tell you, you cannot do it to the American flag, but we don't have yet a law. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to, you could take it and put it on a shirt and walk around as a symbol, put X through it. So that is the component, Andrew, you're talking about, that the only way that we can make these acts work is through legal components and by forcing people to understand who it is, what kind of people you want to see. And we also want to remember, Andrew, is that we have to find a way to use teachable moments in school to help individuals understand it makes sense. You're upset, you don't like it. However, what other alternatives? Because it's learned behavior, right, Andrew? We understand that all this stuff is learned behavior. And so that doesn't happen by accident, that he learned it from somebody else. Maybe he watched it on TikTok, saw something, and said, I'm going to show them a lesson. And so they did that behavior. That is learned. The idea is maybe schools can find a way to find it at DASA, can find a code of ethics violation, but then help them understand about how do you not change your thoughts and feelings, but how do you find ways to show your disagreement that may not necessarily be towards a group and be harmful to somebody, and it becomes a leadership experience. It's not an out-of-school suspension. It might be an opportunity to sit and talk, maybe some way to engage in conversation to learn and learn more. Not sure if that answers your question and gives you much hope, but other than the fact that you're going to do what you think is right based on your situation and your own personal interpretation of what you think you need to do. And that's exactly what you need to do. What you did is the right thing because you faced the right choice.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Andrew. Thanks for asking. Any other questions? Any final comments?
I don't see any other questions right here, Randy. So I think we'll wrap things up. I just have a couple closing comments here real quickly. I mean, first off, thank you for everybody for participating. Thank you for your excellent comments. Randy, there's two here that just popped up. Is a swastika automatic hate speech?
You know, that is a great question. And you're allowed to walk down the street with the swastika. I will tell you, in Germany, it is 100% against the law. You're not allowed to, but it is a symbol of hate. And the ACLU has even come out and argued for them to allow to throw the flags because they don't want to limit anybody else's. So it is considered hate. It's a hateful flag. And it is very offensive to many people. But in many situations, it may not speak, it's still part of free speech, but it might go against your code of conduct. And it is possible, right? So Carrie, I hope that answered your question. As far as DASA, it wouldn't surprise me, right? That if someone gets a DASA claim and they have an attorney, they could clearly go and fight that DASA does violate First Amendment. And that might very well be a place that goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, in which potentially is the contradiction of this power of free speech and how it goes about. Unless there's an argument on the side of DASA where, wait, we're there to protect the individuals that have targeted against them, incitement against them, and hate. So it's a great question, and one that I would love to see play itself out with lawyers in that situation.
Joyce, your comment there is excellent. Joyce wrote, a combination of two quotes that say it all. You have the power to change your thoughts, and your thoughts have the power to change the world. I mean, how true. Just 2 points here as we wrap up, or actually 3. On the CTLE forums, if you need them, email me. As we look at, Randy had the slide there towards the end about the culture conducive to positive learning. I would challenge you to replace the word inclusion with belonging. And the reason I make this difference a lot as I talk about inclusion. And think about this. Inclusion is being asked to go to the dance. Okay, you're asked, you've gone. Belonging is being asked to dance. You think about that. The other piece, just as we wrap up with this, NYSER has an online university, and we have quite a bit of programming there. One of the courses that is there and available is on unconscious bias. It's around 35 minutes, and it is excellent. So if any of you would be interested, you can contact myself, and either myself or Connie Wallace will work with you. If you're not already using, if your district isn't using the online university, we can help you with that. But that course is excellent, and it certainly has a fit here, especially with your staff. So with all of that said, Randy, thank you so much. You covered a lot of very difficult things. You framed it in an excellent framework, and I brought a lot of value to our members. To everybody that participated, thank you so much. Your comments that you provided were excellent. And it's to all of you, continue to do the great stuff that you do each and every day. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Have a great day.
Thanks. Take care, Randy. Good to see you again. Thanks, Brett.
David.
You're welcome, David.